Welcome to Odds.com's NCAA basketball coverage for Friday, March 12th with our expert, Maxwell Smart. Max, I haven't broken down all of your action for Thursday. We're filming this about 10 minutes before midnight. There were some winners, there were some losers. It was a good enough night. How did it end up for you?
Yeah, it ended up 4-4. It was a 1-3 start and then a 3-1 finish. So down probably under half a unit, depending on the juice. So obviously better than losing 11 units, but still not the right direction. So until I have a positive night and it's like a 3 or 4 unit night, I'm not going to be happy. And hopefully this is the card that gets us and me back on track with my show picks.
I went 2-1, tailing you. I opened 0-1 as well. Michigan State really, really disappointing. But Rutgers was an easy casher. Ole Miss was an easy casher. So thank you for that 2-1 day. Max, before we get started, some possible bad news coming out of your UConn Huskies team. Do you want to share it with everybody right now before we get going?
Yeah, while I was enjoying the hot shots to the back of the throat that UConn was throwing every member of the DePaul men's basketball team, unfortunately, our star, James Bouknight, got injured again. So he had to be helped off the court. He needed assistance to get to the locker room. I can only suspect that it's something with his leg above his ankle. And obviously, the Super UConn fans will keep me updated, and I will be checking after the show because this drastically changes the outlook on our betting when it comes to UConn games without James in the lineup. And this was a very sweat-free, non-ass-clenching type win, and I love those things.
Gotta love those things. Max, you've picked marquee games for this huge Friday, March 12th card. Let's get right to work. We start at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, bright and early. Big Ten Tourney quarterfinal. Maryland Terrapins 16-12, 9-11 in the Big Ten versus number 4 Michigan Wolverines 19-3, 14-3 in the Big Ten. We're at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. Michigan opening up as 8-point favorites. We haven't seen a lot of movement here. Couple books hanging 7.5, couple books hanging 8.5. This total opened up at 133.5. It's down to 133. So not a lot of movement here in Maryland, Michigan. Maryland's won 5 straight. They were playing good basketball. Oh, sorry. Maryland had won 5 straight. Sorry. It's late here. Maryland had won 5 straight, and we're playing good basketball before closing out the regular season in disappointing fashion. We talked about this a couple days ago. They lose 60-55 to Northwestern as 4.5-point favorites. Followed that with a 66-61 loss at home in Penn State as 6-point favorites. They showed everyone that they were able to turn it back on like a flip of a switch, and they defeat Michigan State 68-57 in the first game of the Big Ten tournament. The final score was not an indication of Maryland's dominance. I turned it off. They were up 19 with 7 minutes left. Eric Ayala scored 21 points. Aaron Wiggins added 19. Now, Max, can they carry it over against the Michigan team that defeated them 84-73 at home and 87-63 in Ann Arbor? Maryland won this game against Michigan State despite shooting 38.2% from the field and 30% from 3. They played clean, in-control basketball. They only turned the ball over 11 times, but they're going to have to shoot better against this Michigan team. Michigan closed out the regular season poorly. They're losing 2 of 3. They're the only team I have futures on, and it was not what I wanted to see. And they lost to Illinois at home on March 2nd. They shot just 34%. And the main thing, Max, that I hope you can touch on in your breakdown is they were beaten on the glass 42-26. In their loss 5 days later to Michigan State, they were beaten on the glass again 38-32, and they shot just 41.7%. This dominant front court has not looked so dominant lately. And maybe more concerning, senior guard Eli Brooks hurt his left ankle early in the game at the Breslin Center, did not return. Listed as questionable to play here. He averages 8.7 points per game, 2.9 assists, hits 94.1% from the foul line, 36.4% from 3. The Wolverines will go as far as Hunter Dixon, Isaiah Livers, and Franz Wagner will take them. They do everything well, I thought, until the losing 2 of 3. They shoot 48.8% from the field, 38.6% from 3, and 76.5% from the line. Big Ten tournament quarterfinals, Max. Maryland, Michigan, take it away.
Yeah, I think, Jim, with Michigan, you nailed it. The front court and specifically Hunter Dickinson has not been his 17 and 9 point per game type guy. And I think that when you look at Michigan, this is a group that needs other guys to step up. And I think that Shawnee Brown, in the absence of Eli Brooks, is definitely going to be counted upon. He's a 6'5" experienced guard that can give you some ball handling, takes care of the basketball, and he's going to be able to hit from all three levels. I think that although you lose the good free throw shooting of Eli Brooks, you still have quite a few capable 80+% free throw shooters. I think that when you're Michigan, you got to be able to box out and limit your second chance opportunities that you allow for your opponent, like you said, Jim. And with Maryland specifically, you got to disrupt their ball movement. You can't let Aaron Wiggins and Daryl Morcell throw it to Dante Scott. You can't let Hakeem Hart be able to drive and kick. This is a physical Maryland team, and I think playing them twice definitely may give you a little bit of overconfidence. I think that with Maryland, they have to do a good job of stopping Michigan from scoring on the interior, because with Brandon Johns, Austin Davis, and Hunter Dickinson, there's going to be a lot of touches going in there. And with Michigan, Mike Smith always going to play a very important role in every game, because if he gets outdueled, if he's a turnover machine, if he isn't taking good shots when his team needs him to take those shots, this is a major flaw for Michigan, and something that I think has played out recently. When you need Mike Smith to score a bucket for you, you're in a bad position when it comes to the talent on this roster. I think Michigan's got to score at the free throw line. They got to score at a tempo that gets them into the 80s. And listen, with their defense, it's got to match Maryland's. Problem is, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that you're messing with a dangerous Michigan spot situationally because of how they played most recently. But at this number, I got to take Maryland at this early game. Defense wins, and with this Maryland team, their offense has definitely been very effective lately. When you look at the fact that they're hitting 70% of their free throws, they're hitting 35% from the three-point line, and 52% inside the arc, the defense and the offense are going together. So I'll take the points with Maryland and bite the bullet.
I completely understand why you're doing that. Do you want Maryland +8 at -110 or +8.5 at -115?
Yeah, I'll take the 8.5 at -115.
Now that 8.5 is available at Fox Bet. Those of you guys, the 8.5 I believe is BetMGM. Sorry, the Fox Bet's hanging the 8. Those of you who roll with us know that Max has to use legal licensed books in America, which makes things a little tricky and a little more difficult than it would be otherwise. +8.5 at -115 gets Max's card started on Maryland. +8.5 -115. And let me just quickly ask you this, Max. Sorry to harp on it, but those of us that are sitting with the Wolverines futures in our pocket, should we be concerned about what we're seeing?
I don't know if I would say you should be concerned, especially yet. I think that with this Michigan team, it's going to be about matchups. It's about who they have to go up against. And that's the beautiful thing about March Madness. You could end up avoiding any of the kind of teams that cause your scheme problems. I think with Maryland and the way that they beat them already this year, it's just a dangerous matchup for them to go in overconfident when they haven't been playing well. I think that this is going to be a real test of coaching, and I'm just not sure Juwan Howard is going to have his guys ready to have that killer instinct yet. I could be completely wrong, Jim. I just think that the number says Maryland. So
no qualms with that breakdown. It makes a ton of sense to me. Let's move on. 12 p.m. Eastern, we head over to the SEC tournament quarterfinal. Mississippi State Bulldogs 15-13, 8-10 in the SEC versus number 6 Alabama Crimson Tide 21-6, 16-2 in the SEC. Bridgestone Arena, Nashville, Tennessee. Great call on the Mississippi State Bulldogs today, Max. That was a thing of beauty. Alabama opening up as 9-point favorites. That's moved to 8.5. We do see a couple 8s now on the board. This total opened up at 140.5, and we see a mess. We see 140s, 141s, 141.5. So the market a little confused on the total here in the SEC quarters. Mississippi State lost 2 of 3 to finish off the regular season. One of those losses was a tight 64-59 loss at home versus Alabama. Mississippi State was down 13 at the half, battled back to be within a bucket late. In that game, the Bulldogs were 1 of 12 for 3, missed all 6 in the second half. You can think that they're right there. They're right there. And this is a big spread. Today in the second round of the SEC tournament, Mississippi State came back from 5 points down in the final 3 minutes and 7 seconds. And again, 3 of 14 from three-point range. This poor three-point shooting seems to follow them. Molinar sinks threes on 2 straight possessions late to make that number a little more impressive than the 3 of 14. But that's where they were before Molinar hit those late 2 threes. The Bulldogs lost both of the regular season meetings with the Crimson by 8 and 5. DJ Stewart, Molinar, DJ Stewart, Iverson Molinar, all average healthy double digits. The Bulldogs hit 45.5% from the field, 34.9% from 3, and really struggle from the line at 64.1%. Alabama finished the regular season strong, winning 6 of 7 games on their way to the SEC regular season crown. They're a strong, balanced squad who seemed to improve as the season went on. They have 4 players averaging double digits in Jaden Shackelford, John Petty Jr., Javon Quinterly, and Herbert Jones. They seem to be more than the sum of their parts. They score 79.6 points per game, hit 43.1% from the field, 35.5 from 3, 71.5 from the stripe. Max, very interesting spot here. Are you going back to the well with the Bulldogs?
I definitely am considering it, Jim, just because this Mississippi State team has so much size that it's really going to cause Alabama problems. I think that when you look at the quality of size that Mississippi State has, the ability that they can extend possessions, it's very hard for me to say no at this number at this early time of day. But the problem is, and obviously always my problem is, do I follow my number or do I go against it? And my number likes Alabama. But what I'm worried about with Alabama is, can they deal with the size of Mississippi State? Can their guards crash the glass effectively? Can Herb Jones and Jawan Gary and Alex Reese be effective? I know that there's a lot of different guys that Alabama can roll out at Mississippi State. So if someone isn't producing, there's a next guy waiting to come on the floor. But there's just so many wild cards for Alabama. They want to be the best defensive team in the nation, but they still want to spread you out. They still want to run on you, and they still want to shoot 25 to 30 3-point attempts a game. I think that when you look at Alabama, if you're going to get an explosive dynamite performance that's going to help them get a better seed, which I would put them as a 2 right now, well, then you're going to have to hit your threes early. You're going to have to disrupt Mississippi State's offensive flow. You're going to have to do a good job of drawing fouls and converting those at the line. If you can make threes early, you're going to be able to soften up the interior defense because Mississippi State's guards are going to have to close out on you. They're not going to be able to help defend on drivers. And listen, when Bama falls behind early, Bama's screwed. So I'm just going to freaking bite the bullet. I'm going to ride with my numbers on this. I'm going to take Alabama full game. It's a dangerous one, but I think that if Coach Oates has these guys playing at their best, Josh Primo, fellow Canadian of ours, is going to have a big game distributing to John Petty and Jaden Shackelford. And Herb Jones, he's going to have an all-around junkyard type game. So give me Alabama in hopefully a non-ass clincher. And Mississippi State is tired, drank some very bad grape Kool-Aid, and got food poisoning.
-8.5, -110 at FanDuel. Max is locked in with the Alabama Crimson Tide. We move on. 12 p.m. Eastern, we head over to the AAC, American Athletic Conference Championship quarterfinal. South Florida Bulls, 9-12, 4-10 in the conference versus Wichita State Shockers, 15-4, 11-2 in conference. We're at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. Wichita State opening up as 9.5-point favorites. That's moved down to 9. We see our first 8.5 on the board. This total opening up at 138.5. We see it all over the place. 137s, 137.5s, and 138s. So it is dropping. I shouldn't say all over the place. We're in Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. South Florida lost 4 straight to end the season, losing all 4 by at least 17 points. The final loss was an 80-63 setback to these Wichita State Shockers. South Florida shot the ball poorly, turned the ball over 16 times. They fared much better when they lost to Wichita at home, 82-77 on December 22nd. But like a few of these other teams, they turned that around in the opener of their conference tourney. They won 73-71 over Temple. David Collins had a season-high 23 points. He was the only Bull to average double digits with 12.2 points per game during the season. Jameer Chaplin had 12. Michael Durr added 11 and 11. They shot poorly, as per usual, 38.8% from the field, 27.8% from 3, but they only turned the ball over 7 times. Second leading scorer, Alexis Yetna, has been out since February 24th with an ankle injury. He's listed as questionable to go. Third leading scorer, Caleb Murphy, played 20 minutes against Temple, struggled with just 2 points, and he's on the injury report now, undisclosed affliction, questionable to play. The Bulls struggle with their shot all year, 40.3 from the field, 32.4 from 3, and 64.2 from the line. Wichita closed out the regular season on a 7-game winning streak, won the regular season conference title. At the end of February, they signed interim coach Isaac Brown to a 5-year deal. They were led by sophomore guard Tyson Etienne, who averaged 17.1 points per game. The only other player that averaged double digits is his backcourt partner, Al-Tariq Gilbert, at 10.1 points, 4.2 assists. They play clean ball, only turned the ball over 11.6 times, hit 41% from the field, 34 from 3, and 69.1% from the foul line. They don't shoot very well for being a number 1 seed in a conference tournament. Max, take it away. South Florida, Wichita.
Yeah, with this Wichita State team, I don't want them to fall into this trap of they have this brilliant conference season, they battle through adversity, and then they get knocked out in their first game in the conference tournament. They're definitely vulnerable in this spot, Jim, but I got to look at Wichita State here. The fact was David Collins really didn't have that type of success that you need to against Wichita State's pressure defense. I think that with Wichita, they have to obviously limit David Collins. They have to limit Michael Durr on the glass if there's no Alexis Yetna. And they got to establish themselves early in these areas, getting touches for everybody around, getting a couple early threes, scoring some buckets off good distro, and this is a group that if they can create some freaking transition scoring running opportunities, well, the more takeaways that they can get early, the better. When you look at this group, they've made very good second half adjustments recently, and I would say 3 out of their last 5 games that I looked through their box scores. And if they can hold South Florida, who normally does shoot around like 35 to 37%, around that and under 30% from the 3-point line, I just don't see what's going to change from their most recent game. This is where Wichita State has to be on their best. They have a first half advantage by my numbers, about 6 points. They have to stay hot from 3, where they have about a 5-make advantage over the last couple. And listen, with their field goal defense, they just need to keep it efficient, and win the battle in the turnovers. So when I look at Wichita State, they have to be able to look at what's happened to these other highly touted seeds, these favorites, and just not want to suffer the same fate. So I'm going to ride with the Shockers. It's too good of a story not to like, and there's at least 2 points of value with the number.
Wow, we have BetMGM down to 8.5 here, so that's the best line. The rest of the books are at 9. Now the 9s are at minus 105 and minus 106, but we'll take this minus 8.5 at minus 110. That's available at BetMGM. Lock that in. Minus 8.5, minus 110 at BetMGM. All right, Max, we roll on. Next up for us, 2 p.m. Eastern, Big Ten tournament quarterfinal. Number 9, Ohio State Buckeyes, 19-8, 12-8 in conference versus number 20, Purdue Boilermakers, 18-8, 13-6 in conference. We're back at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. Ohio State opening up as 1.5-point favorites. A couple books have hung 2s. This total opened up at 143. We see 142.5 now on the board. Ohio State closed out the regular season in ugly fashion, losing 4 straight. They had 4 days off before facing Minnesota in round 2 of the Big Ten tournament today, and they just barely squeaked by Minnesota 79-75. Leading scorer E.J. Liddell, 14 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. He's averaging 16 points, 6.5 boards on the season. Dwayne Washington Jr. scored 16 points. He's averaging 15.3 points per game. Third leading scorer, Justice Suing, who's been battling a hamstring issue, went for 16. This Buckeye squad hits 46% from the field, 36.1% from 3, and 77% from the foul line. Max, it feels like both of these teams are starting to slip, but it is just Ohio State that everybody is questioning right now. Are you one of those questioning Ohio State, or do you believe that they're going to take care of business here against Purdue?
Jim, I like my dark maple syrup on pancakes, and you know who else likes dark maple syrup on their pancakes? The Purdue Boilermakers. They got this kid. I think that we've talked about him before. He's really goddamn tall. So whenever you have that really tall shelf that you can't get to, like at a library or at a Costco, you just bring this guy along with you, and he'll get everything that you need. His name's Zach Edey. And although he's been a bit of the third wheel when it comes to this front court rotation against Ohio State in the previous 2 games in conference play, I do hope that Matt Painter watches this video and realizes that when you have a Canadian and you play them as much as they need to, you win games and you cash tickets. When I look at this Ohio State team, you know, they definitely have the quality parts. When you look at Dwayne Washington, you look at C.J. Walker at the guard spot. I think that's someone that's definitely going to be an X factor for Ohio State if they win this game is going to be Kyle Young. If they have Seth Towns out there, this is the kind of stage that you would expect him or Musa Jallo or Justin Aarons to be able to go off from the 3-point line. And this is going to be a real challenge, a third time out for this young Purdue backcourt of guys like Brandon Newman and Mason Gillis and guys like freaking Jaden Ivey. At the end of the day, though, I think that when Ohio State wins, they're hitting threes and locking it down defensively. Their 2 losses don't really match up well with the size and physicality of Purdue. That's been the advantage. And although they beat Minnesota, Jim, they barely beat Minnesota. They had a double-digit lead around 13. They coughed that up. And if they play that type of late-game basketball, a little loosey-goosey, a little freaking lackadaisical, well, Purdue's going to be up by 7. So I'm looking at Purdue because they've been hot as goddamn hell. 5 straight cashers. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak also. And listen, they win games by starting off with strong first half scoring defense, playing full 40 minutes. And when games are low scoring, they win. When they're high scoring, then it's a little more of a coin flip. I think that when they can force their opponent out of rhythm and they can convert at the free throw line when they get there, they're going to own the defensive glass. They're going to have a lot of one and dones for Ohio State. So unless Ohio State is shooting brilliantly, I just think that the team balance of Purdue and the fact that they don't have to rely on isolation for a lot of their scoring is going to come into handy. I think that the big boys are going to do the scoring and they're going to get shit off the top shelf. That's what they're there for. So give me Purdue +2 if you can get it for me, Jim.
I can't get you a +2, unfortunately.
So you teased me with the 2 and now you can't get it for me?
No, I can't get it at these licensed books. There's a +1.5 at +100. Or there's +105 on the money line.
No, I'll take the +1.5 at +100. That makes up for it.
+1.5 at +100 is not at BetMGM. I think it was FoxBet. Let me pull it up right here. And yes, it's FoxBet. +1.5 at +100 for the Purdue Boilermakers. Wow. So if Ohio State gets knocked out here in the quarters, how far do they drop seed-wise, do you think, in the tourney?
I'm not really sure. I think that I would have them at like an 11 or a 12 if they lose. So
wow. Unbelievable. Wow. Wild drop for these Ohio State Buckeyes. Wild. We move on. 2 p.m. Eastern. We head over to the SEC Tourney quarterfinal. Florida Gators 14-8, 9-7 in conference versus Tennessee Volunteers 17-7, 10-7 in conference. We're at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee. And let's see what we are dealing with here. And I guess has this game been moved to 2:30? I had 2 p.m. It looks like it might be at 2:30 now. Tennessee opening up as 3-point favorites. That's where it stands right now. Although one book has moved it to 2.5, and it is an indicator book. The total sitting at 133 right across the board. Florida did an excellent job handling the loss of star Keontae Johnson this year. They closed the regular season with a 72-70 home loss to Missouri, followed that up with a 65-54 loss at these Tennessee Volunteers on Sunday. Florida was seemingly in control of that game. Got outscored 37-21 in the second half. Leading scorer Trey Mann did not play in that game. He's been dealing with migraines. He returned for Florida's 69-63 win over Vanderbilt in the second round of the SEC tournament, scoring 22 points and adding 7 rebounds, 6 assists. They will go as far as Trey Mann takes them. They shoot the ball well, hitting 47% from the field, 35.5% from 3, 75.3% from the line. Tennessee was not playing very good ball down the stretch. They won 3 of 6, alternated wins and losses. Their wins came against South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Florida without Trey Mann. They're led in scoring by guards Jaden Springer, Victor Bailey, and Keon Johnson, all average double digits. Springer hitting 46.2% from 3. They don't light up the scoreboard. They average 72.5 points per game, but they play very strong defense, allowing 62.7 points per game. They play clean ball, turn the ball over only 12.3 times a game. They hit 44.3% from the field, 33.6% from 3, and can be trusted at the line, hitting 74.5%. Very interesting spot here. SEC quarterfinal. Max, take it away. Florida, Tennessee.
Jim, I'll just say this first. I'm not a bracketologist, so if some people are dumbfounded by my dropping Ohio State to 12, just take it for the humor that I intended it for. But getting to this game, Jim, when I look at Tennessee, there's always a danger in backing Tennessee because you just never know when they're going to make shots and when they're not going to make shots. Yes, they play top 25 defense in the nation. They lock you down on the three-point line. They really make it hard for you to convert on the interior. And when you have the ball, they're going to try and take it away from you. I think that it comes down to 2 guys that you mentioned with Jaden Springer and Keon Johnson. These are the 2 5-stars that Rick Barnes brought in, and this is the time to see them freaking perform and do what they're supposed to do, and that is lead this backcourt. That was going to be the weakness of this team coming into the season. They've done a great job of filling that void, but now we got to see more. I thought that Yi Pons and John Fulkerson would both be 14-7, 14-8 type guys. Obviously, that has not facilitated, but when you look at the numbers for this Tennessee team, they are an efficient team. They do take care of the basketball and do a good job of crashing the glass and balancing out their shot selection. I think when you look at their ability to avoid blocks and be able to actually get balls on the backboard, they do a good job of that. I think that as long as Tennessee can score at the free throw line and they don't get hung up and 3-point happy, this is a team that's going to win with their defense. Containing Mann and Noah Locke, that's a very tall task. I think that they're going to be able to do that. I think that they're going to show their class of defense. I think that when you have physical big men, you got to get them touches because that's what's going to get you those extra free throw attempts and push Florida's front court depth into danger mode. Colin Castleton is a talented offensive player, but he is not the most stout. He is not the most strong defensively minded guy, especially against a guy like Yi Pons or John Fulkerson. I think that, like I said, it's time for Springer and Johnson to take the starring role. And with Tennessee, don't fall behind. You can't afford to be freaking playing with fire, especially against this Florida team that's going to be out for some revenge. Win the battle at the free throw line, force Florida to use their depth, take the ball away from them, and slow the tempo down. Don't try and run and gun with them. And if you can make it difficult for Florida to hit 3-point shots, we know that they're very dangerous from there, well, then you're going to make your task a lot easier. I look at Tennessee in this spot. I take them up until 3.5. So if you can get me a better number than that, Jim, I'll be quite content taking the Vols. But Jim, before you line shot for me, I'll tell you, I don't support drinking Jack Daniels. I support betting the Tennessee Volunteers, but not Jack Daniels. It's garbage, piss whiskey.
No, I know you have a sophisticated bourbon palate, Max, and I respect that very much. I can get you the Tennessee Volunteers -3 at -110 available at FanDuel.
Sounds good to me, bud.
Let's do it, and we roll on. But we head back to the AAC, American Athletic Conference quarterfinal. Cincinnati Bearcats 10-10, 8-6 in the American versus SMU Mustangs 11-4, 7-4 in the American. Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas, and my goodness, is this ever a COVID conference basketball game of the likes we have never experienced before? SMU 6-point favorites. The total opened up at 144, now down to 143.5, 143. I had a friend call me today who doesn't run with us, a comic out of New York, who said, as soon as this market opens up, bet the Cincinnati Bearcats. And I did not do that. I wanted to hear what you had to say about this game, Max. This is a strange one. Due to COVID issues, SMU hasn't played a game since February 8th. Wow. It's going to be, well, it's just turned March 12th. This team hasn't played in over a month, and here they are in the conference quarters. When we last saw them, the Mustangs were a strong defensive squad, allowing just 66.6 points per game. They put up 74.3 points per game, led in scoring by the dynamic 5'11" point guard Kendrick Davis, who averages 17.7 points, 7.6 assists. 6'8" junior Fern Hunt doesn't have a lot of meat on them bones, but he averages 11.9 points, 8.3 boards. God, 6'8" guy like that, you need some weight on him, man. He's very skinny. The only other Mustang averaging double digits, Canadian Emmanuel Bandumel. Where's our Quebec City boy right there? They hit 45.7% from the field, 34% from three, and 73.8% from the line. Cincinnati snapped a late 2-game losing streak by winning at East Carolina 82-69. They dealt with injuries and players leaving for personal reasons throughout the year, most notably losing third leading scorer and leading assist man point guard David DeJulius left the team in February. They're led by Keith Williams, who averages 15 points and very strong guard, but they're missing their point guard. No one else. Oh, they have one other player averaging double digits. They score 69.9 points per game. They struggle with their shot at times, hitting 43.1% from the field, 31.1% from three, 65.9% from the line. Max, what an interesting COVID situation we have here in the American Athletic Conference quarterfinal, Cincinnati SMU.
Jim, sometimes things look too good to be true, and I'm really hoping that this isn't one of them. We're taking Cincinnati. It's the only way to do it. What I've read from Tim Jankovic is that this team hasn't really had any normality. They haven't had any proper structure. And it's probably going to take them at least a half to get into at least some sort of game-ready mode. I don't like the spot for SMU. I don't think that anybody that looks at betting from a situational aspect likes it. I think that if you don't have a guy like Yornay out there, that's going to hurt. Maybe you don't have Darius McNeil again. So that puts a lot of pressure on guys like Tyson Jolly and William Douglas and Charles Smith to give you some production. Obviously, you got a lot of size with this SMU team, so they can definitely wear you down at times. And they have a Canadian, like you said, with Bandomel. Obviously, he's a French Canadian. It's important to distinguish between the two, but he's still one of us, and I hope that he has a great game. I just hope that it doesn't impact the spread when we take Cincinnati. I think that with this game, I look at Cincinnati also in the first half. I don't like the roster issues for Cincinnati, but I have liked the play of Jeremiah Davenport and Micah Adams-Woods. They both have stepped up and given Keith Williams some other complimentary scoring, which at times has been a little freaking mute. Maybe they also get some production from their walk-on Mason Madsen, who's been able to hit a couple threes, get to the free throw line. He just plays with some goddamn heart. So I think that Cincinnati has to avoid foul trouble. They have to avoid a slow start by scoring in the paint early. And listen, with their scoring production, it's got to come from someone else other than Keith Williams. They played really shitty in the day, so hopefully that doesn't freaking follow them in this game. But I think that this is a Cincinnati team that's going to be able to limit their turnovers. They're going to have a lot of assisted buckets. They're going to be able to convert their free throws late. And they should be just in a better freaking position and a better shape to play this game. If they hit 45% from the field, 10 threes, 15-plus free throws, and they have 16-plus assists, they're winning this game outright. For the show, I wish you allowed me to do half units because I would take a half unit on the money line, but I'm not putting a full unit on the money line after my recent performance. So I'll take Cincinnati on the spread, and then I'll also take Cincinnati in the first half in the morning.
First half in the morning. I will be up bright and early, so I'll be able to hook that up. Full game, do you want +6 at -110 or 6.5 at -120?
6 at -110.
+6 at -110 available at FanDuel. There's been a small move towards Cincinnati. I was very curious to see what kind of move would happen. Max, are you a little surprised there hasn't been a bigger move?
I just think that a lot of people are probably focused on these games that are going on right now, and of the games that have been posted in the last couple hours, those are probably the ones that are getting people's most attention. That's the way that I would at least approach it. If I know that there's a game in a spot and I don't see it moving, then I'll just wait until I start to see one of those indicators start to move, and then I'll jump on it. But if I know that the line isn't going anywhere and it's not getting heavily hit, then I wait as long as possible because of COVID injury info. So,
understandably so. There we have it. Cincinnati Bearcats +6 -110 available at FanDuel, and a first half move will be made by Max as well come the morning. We move on 6:30 p.m. Eastern, the Big 12 semifinal. And Max, sorry, I have 6:30 here, but you told me that it might be changed to 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
I thought that it was 5:30, but it was actually 5:30 Central Time. I'm used to the whole world operating in the Eastern time zone. So when I see the Central time zone, I'm like, what? That thing exists? Why don't they just go by the Eastern time zone?
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you, man.
The whole sports betting world revolves on the Eastern time zone. Okay? If we had to cut off the West Coast, we'd be just fine. You know that, right?
I do. It certainly helps a handicapper being in the East Coast, because when I back in my days when I was down in Costa Rica, I was waking up. The worst of it, I'd wake up at 3:45, but waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I had to do that because we were behind the East Coast time zone. If you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and tacking, but you have to do some work at night, but still it's 1:30 out west. Everybody's asleep, and you're working on the card. You just have a huge advantage. So I agree with that very, very much. Number 12 ranked Oklahoma State, 19-7, 11-7 in conference versus Baylor, 22-1, 13-1. Big 12. I can't wait to hear you break this game down, Max. We're at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Let's see what we are dealing with here. We have Baylor opening up as 9.5-point favorites. Let's move down to 9. This total opened up at 151.5. It's dropping 150 and 150.5 on the board. Let's start with Oklahoma State. After losing at Baylor 81-70 last Thursday, Oklahoma State beat West Virginia twice in a row in very impressive fashion. Today in the quarters, they turned the ball over 20 times, but they maintained their composure and took care of business. This sloppy play seems to follow them around. They average 16 turnovers a game. Possible number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Cade Cunningham went for 17 points, 8 boards, 4 assists. Avery Anderson went for 17 points. He went for 31 in the game that Cade missed, that first win over West Virginia. This is a dangerous team that is building confidence and now gets another shot at Baylor. They hit 46.6% from the field, 33.8% from 3, and 71.1% from the stripe. Baylor did not look very convincing in their Big 12 opener against a weak Kansas State team today. And I'm not sure how much to read into that. And I'm going to let Max handle that. The top-seeded Bears came in after their first regular season conference title since 1950. 3 straight wins over ranked teams. A number 1 seed in the tourney, pretty much locked up. And they turned the ball over 21 times. And also, Maceo Teague had 24, David Mitchell 23, Jared Butler 18. So the Bears starting backcourt and 3 leading scorers scored all but 9 of the Bear points. Baylor has not looked nearly as dominant since that 3-week COVID pause they had to take. They seem to struggle with big men. But as usual, they shot the ball so well. 53.1% from the field and 40.9% from 3 against Kansas State. On the season, they had 49.7% from the field and 42.9% from 3. Even when they play badly, they shoot beautifully. Max, take it away. Big 12 semifinal, Oklahoma State Baylor.
Jim, the problem with doing and betting conference tournaments is sometimes you got to go to those teams that just cost you money. And when I look at those Oklahoma State Cowboys, I'm like, you talented sons of bitches. You're smart enough to go to Canada and recruit Matthew Alexander Moncrief. Bravo. Wonderful job. But then you freaking screw me over in the West Virginia game. So this is why you have your own numbers. You look at your numbers and you're like, oh, there's 2 points of value with Oklahoma State. So listen, Baylor looks vulnerable, Jim. You nailed it right on the head. The problem is with what Oklahoma State wants to do schematically against you on offense is spread you out and then take someone to the rim. Well, Baylor doesn't really allow you to do that as easily as other defenses do in the Big 12. So you're going to need Avery Anderson. And what we saw from Avery Anderson today was obviously a good double-digit scoring performance, but when it came was in the second half when Oklahoma State needed it most. So this is a group that definitely has a lot of different guys that can bring you that outlier performance and cash you a ticket. I think that with Bryce Williams and his 3-point shooting, that's another weapon right there. And then with Isaac LeCayley back, he didn't really do much, but he got a real big offensive rebound that led to a 3-point bucket that ended up helping them win the game. So I think that with Oklahoma State, they haven't matched up well against Baylor, but Baylor's definitely shortened their rotation. And I think that there's going to be a little bit less reliance on the bench, and Coach Drew is going to run out with his three big guards. I think that with Oklahoma State, though, the difference is going to be the front court, the area that Baylor struggled with, like you mentioned. I think that Caleb Boone, Matthew Alexander Moncrief both have to stay out of foul trouble. I think that there has to be a concerted effort from Cade Cunningham to go in and get rebounds and to really be a thorn in Baylor's front court side. I think that when you look at this number, it's not a good number for Baylor. I think that if you play possum in the first half and come out blazing in the second half like you did against West Virginia, you are playing with fire. You are playing a much more efficient offensive team. I recognize that. But with the turnovers, against K-State, that was definitely eye-opening. I will say with K-State, though, they do have, I would say, not gypsy magic, but they do have 2 Canadians in Izagu and freaking Rudy Williams. So it is understandable why they're able to stay in it. But I'm just a little bitter because I had 6.5 and they only won by 6. In this game, Jim, I'm going to take Oklahoma State. I think that they're going to be very good with their shot selection. They're going to lock down on the 3-point line. They're going to spread the floor and have some success driving to the rim. And if they own the defensive glass like they're capable of, I just don't see Baylor getting those extra possessions to burn you with those open threes on the wings. So Oklahoma State +9, and I'll be content with that.
And you got it. Oklahoma State +9, -110 available at FanDuel. There is a one at 9.5 at -120, but I can understand.
Yeah, no -120s. Please.
There you go. Oklahoma State +9, -110 available at FanDuel. What an interesting breakdown. What an interesting game. And same with the last one on Max's card, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, the ACC tournament semifinal. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Man, have they been impressive in the second half of the season. 16-8, 11-6 in conference versus number 16 Virginia Cavaliers, 18-6, 13-4 in conference. We're at Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. Money coming in on Virginia. Virginia opening up as 2.5-point favorites. That's moved to 4 at some books, although there still are some 3s available. Georgia Tech finished the regular season very strong, winning 6 straight. They carried that right over to the ACC quarters when they defeated Miami. I don't have the score in front of me. I believe it was 70-66. It wasn't a huge victory, but we'll talk about a little bit why that was. And they've also not played in the NCAA tourney in 11 years. Now look like they're on their way. Jose Alvarado, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Michael DeVoe, 13 points. And Alvarado, 13 as well. DeVoe got 7 assists to go with that. Moses Wright, ACC Player of the Year, averaging 18 points and 8 boards. Sat out 8 minutes of the second half with 4 fouls. Then he picked up his 5th. He left with just 7 points, but no matter. The Yellow Jackets took care of business. Jordan Usher went for 15. This is a strong team. They hit 47.5% from the field, 35.2% from 3, and 73% from the line. Virginia looked in danger of wasting a strong season with a late season 3-game losing streak, but it appears they've turned it around now. Regular season wins over Miami and Louisville, and then defeating Syracuse today in the ACC quarters with a game-winning 3 by Reese Beekman. Beekman was 8 of 31 for 3 this year, 25.8%, and he cashes one. Hauser goes for 21 points. Trey Murphy, 15. Hauser averages 15.8 points, hits 44.4% from 3. Murphy averages 11.1 and hits 44.6% from 3. They play strong defense. They don't turn the ball over. They hit their shots. We talk about them often here. 48.1% from the field, 38.6% from 3, and 81.2% from the stripe. Do you agree with this market movement towards Virginia, Max? How are you betting this game? ACC tournament semifinal, take it away.
It's hard to deny the number moving. I think that this line should have been around 4.5 for Virginia against Georgia Tech because they really do match up well and do a good job of stopping a lot of the strengths that Georgia Tech has, and that starts with Alvarado and his ability to get to the rim from either side. I think that with Georgia Tech, they got to score 65 plus to beat this Virginia team. They can't be held under 60 and expect to win. I think that with Georgia Tech, they have been a much better second half team. I think that when you look at it, they've been averaging over 40 points per second half, and gives them probably I would say at least more than a bucket advantage, maybe even 2. I think that with Jose Alvarado, he's got to just lead this offense. He's got to drive, and he's got to be able to decide whether he's got to pass it off or he's got enough room to get a shot off. Obviously, with him taking that injury to the leg, you are a little worried about if he has an off game tomorrow. But if this Georgia Tech team can take the ball away from Virginia, if they can win with some pressure, then they're definitely going to be in it. When you look at Virginia, they were lucky today to get away from Syracuse and get out of that, because if they had gone to overtime, in my opinion, I think that they lose outright. Obviously, they were playing with heart. I think it was Reese Beekman whose brother was tragically killed, and then he hits that game-winning shot. Don't quote me on that. I think that was the case. But with Virginia, every time I watch them, they just seem to be like a old sex worker under a bridge who's who's loose like a freaking hole in the tire. Okay? I hate to get so drastic and so vulgar about it, Jim, but this Virginia 3-point defense has just been terrible. When I watched Syracuse eat them alive today, it was just sad. And if Georgia Tech can do anything close to that, and like let's not freaking bash them too hard because they're a 35% 3-point shooting team themselves. Virginia better have their freaking pants on right and their heads on straight. So I think that with Virginia, though, I have to go back to them. I think that at the end of the day, this is a Virginia team that has a stronger defensive scheme. They do a better job of controlling the defensive glass. They're able to limit their own turnovers and carelessness with the ball because they have the two very strong ball handlers. And if their 3-point shooters in Sam Hauser and Trey Murphy are able to be a little more efficient with their threes, I don't think that they have much problems or as many problems as they did with Syracuse today. So I'm begrudgingly going to take Virginia and go against the number saying that it should be Georgia Tech.
Very, very interesting. Okay. The market's moving towards Virginia quickly. So FanDuel's already moved it to 4. Bet365 still hanging at 3, but it's at minus 120. Let's see what we can do. And then Circa disappointing us for the first time without these games up. FoxBet doesn't have it up. Can BetMGM come through for us here? Come on, BetMGM. Come through for us here. 4.5. Virginia's moved to. Wow. What a tricky spot, Max.
Well, yeah, because at 4.5, it's like, well, then I start looking at Georgia Tech.
Wow, let's see if Circa's back up. Let's try this again here. Because you have a 3 at minus 120. I know you don't want minus 120s, but that certainly seems – yeah, no, Circa does not have us. Huh. What do you want to do, Max?
I hate to go against my own rules, so I'm not going to. Just give me a 3.5 then if I can get it.
There isn't one.
Oh, so there's only 3,
3.
4, 4.5.
There's 3, 4, and 4.5 right now at these legal licensed books.
Okay, so do you have Bet365 open?
Yeah.
Okay, so go to the additionals. Go to the alternative spreads. Let's see the line there.
There you go. Yeah, so you can have – wow, unbelievable. This is so unbelievable. So they have Virginia minus 3 at minus 120. Yeah. But when I go to the additional numbers, and this is a legitimate bet. Like, you can legitimately take this. It's minus 3 and minus 115.
Yeah, okay. Then give me that. Because that's what I'm going to bet, because I can use Bet365.
That's totally legitimate. That's a totally legitimate find right there. So if you go to the main props, they've got it 3.5 at minus 120. Their game spread is minus 3 at minus 120. So they've made a mistake, but that's a legitimate, legal licensed mistake that you can completely take advantage of that would be paid out. It's not one of those mistakes that wouldn't get paid out. So there you go. Wow, good call looking at the alternative lines, Max. Very, very, very smart. Very shrewd. Minus 3 at minus 115 available at Bet365. And I clicked on it. You know, I have an account with them. I clicked on it. I can bet that right now. So that's a completely legitimate line. All right, that puts a bow on Max's card. Max, let's review your action for this giant Friday, March 12th of conference tourney action. You start with Maryland plus 8.5 at 11:30 a.m. this morning, or in 11 hours. Then we move on to Alabama minus 8.5 at minus 110. You follow that up with Wichita State Shockers minus 8.5 at minus 110. Then you move on to the Purdue Boilermakers plus 1.5 at plus 100. And that was a Fox bet. I didn't write that down, so let me write that down. There. Then you have Tennessee Volunteers minus 3, minus 110 at FanDuel. You follow that up with the Cincinnati Bearcats plus 6 at minus 110 at FanDuel. Then you have Oklahoma State plus 9 and minus 110 at FanDuel. And you have Virginia -3, -115 at Bet365 to put a bow on your card. Does that all sound right?
Yes, it does.
Wow, Max, a huge day ahead of us. I will see you in 24 hours when we get right back to work here for the Saturday card. And then big news for us, we are going live on Sunday for the big draw for the brackets. 6 p.m. Eastern, you can see Maxwell Smart and myself live. And I should have mentioned that off the top of the show. I'll be mentioning it often as we move forward. Max, any last words for the Grey Cappers supporting the show?
Yeah, I'll just say this. With all this college basketball on, don't be afraid to leave the NHL and NBA alone. They'll still be there when college basketball's over. And let's just be brutally honest here. You want the best product. You bet on kids that don't have money. You want to bet on professionals? That's fine. Go ahead. But sometimes they're spending more money than I have and getting better stripper service than I get. And I just cannot support anything like that. So remember, tip, and tip more to your local strippers. They need your money more than ever now.
Oh, that was just beautifully put. You're a man of the strippers. It just means the world to strippers everywhere. On behalf of Maxwell Smart and myself, let's have a big Friday to start our weekend and keep it cashing through the week. Much love to you. Thank you for watching. Let's get paid in full. Get that cash.